I think I've spent the last 3 years telling my clients that all of our outer planets are changing signs. Pluto is moving into Aquarius. Uranus is going to go into Gemini, and we're going to have a Saturn conjunction in the 0 degrees of Aries. And now that I'm dabbling in Adityas, I realize all of those transits are actually happening in different signs, different rashis, and the flavor is going to be different of these transits.
Saturn going into Aryama, where Saturn likes to be, it's a good placement. That means that it's a reset of our long-term alliances. Everywhere, we're resetting our long-term alliances with relationships, romantic relationships, relationships between men and women. Because it's going through this transformation, there's a lot of pushback or there's a lot of negative reactions anytime something is changing in a major way. But it will work itself out as Neptune moves through Aryama. It's a big relationship focus. It's going to change for the better because we are out of the Iron Age. We are in an ascending cycle and we're getting better. People want better lives.
AI can be really like your best friend because it wants to keep that relationship with you and it's always available. And it doesn't have its own standpoint. When you're dealing with another real life human being, they've got their own agendas all the time. AI in some ways just wants your attention. And there's a lot of people who need attention. That's what Varuna is and Parjanya, our water signs, are offering us, is that connection.
Keep an eye on Mars.
Yeah.
And the Mars-Rahu conjunction with Mercury right now.
Yeah.
So Mercury's getting shamed, Mars is getting starved. Not a good time to travel.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Fiona's Adityas podcast, episode 2. I am thrilled to have with me Laura Barat. Hello, Laura. Welcome. I was going to say welcome back, but welcome to my new podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I've invited Laura along because for those of us who are beginning to learn about the Adityas, beginning to practice, and maybe we're beginning to do predictions with the Adityas, we're in a sort of whole new world. And I wanted to speak with someone who's also maybe chartering this territory and maybe got some insights about what's going on. So today, Laura and I are going to try to talk about some of the implications of predicting using the Adityas. But before I do that, I just want to back up a little bit and welcome everybody and just let you know that this podcast is about the Adityas, which is a type of astrology. I like to think about it as the ancient and intrinsic astrology of India. It relies on the goddess Aditi. I always love a form of astrology that relies on a goddess. It's already a good start. She's the goddess of love, so that's a 2 for 2 for me. She's an unbroken circle of love, and her 12 sons, meaning her children, her 12 sons help the sun transit through our ecliptic, through this circle of love. And each of these Aditya deities, her sons, travel with 6 beings. If you want to know all about that, it's a renaissance of the Adityas right now. You could head on over to Ernst Wilhelm's site, astrology-videos.com, where there are more than 100 videos on these various components. And there's more than 200 pages manual to go with it. I haven't invited Laura on with any expectation that we're going to explain to you the whole of the Adityas. But if you are beginning to play in the world of Adityas and you want to know what does it mean for transits, this might be a great place to be. And that's why I've invited Laura along because, Laura, as I was saying to you in the pre-chat, I think I've spent the last 3 years telling my clients that all of our outer planets are changing signs. It's a time of enormous potential. Pluto is moving into Aquarius. Uranus is going to go into Gemini, and we're going to have a Saturn conjunction in the 0 degrees of Aries. And now that I'm dabbling in Adityas, I realize all of those transits are actually happening in different signs, different rashis, and the flavor is going to be different of these transits. So I'm hoping that through discussing with you that, and maybe you'll become a regular guest, be so gracious to help us out often, that you might help us to understand some of these different flavors of the current transits. So welcome, Laura. And maybe we should begin by just pointing out that we're lucky with the Adityas that we know exactly where they start. So our first Aditya is Dhata Aditya, but it doesn't start at the equinox in the way that Aries starts at the equinox for tropical Vedic astrology. So is there anything that you can share with us about that?
I've adopted using the Adityas exclusively. No, I'm just giving readings with the Adityas. And for about a few years before I was using Crazy Tropical, before I learned the Adityas, I was basically using that, keeping it in the back of my head when I gave readings. So I've been using this for quite a while. And so for Dhata, just in my personal experience, makes a lot more sense to me than, and especially how the planets are now, where you have Rahu going through Dhata. And that on a world scale, that makes a lot more sense, especially with what's going on in the world events. And it makes sense to me because the mother, Dhata is the mother, or it gives the theme of a mother figure, a support. You have your foundation, your support. That makes sense. It's the first Aditya. With Aries, zodiac animals or the ram, and it has these connotations of aggression, assertiveness, compulsion, following instincts. There really isn't a specific reason why it would be the first. And the Dhata Aditya is the first because it's the mother. That's where everything comes from. So that makes a lot of sense to me. And then the fact that it starts 30 degrees before the equinox, because when March 21st, we're right a couple days past it right now, spring is already sprung. By the time by March 20th, it's been spring for a while. And even in the other cultures, like in Celtic culture, they celebrate spring in February, or the beginning of spring in February. And then the Chinese New Year, that begins way before the vernal equinox. So the cultures were celebrating spring long before we say, oh, spring begins now, but spring's already happening. So that makes a lot more sense to me too.
It's very beautiful. We are in this transition from Dhata to Aryama right now. That equinox is right in the middle of these two signs. And it's very beautiful because it's a masculine and a feminine on either side of this equinox, joining these 2 months of spring. Like in the Indian system of 6 seasons, these are the 2 spring months with the equinox in the middle, with Dhata, the mother, the foundation, but is a masculine sign, and then the equinox, and then Aryama, this feminine sign. So I'm enjoying just it's a recalibration of those energies around the equinoxes and around the solstices, because it is a sun system. This is about the sun's transit, the chariot that's moving the sun around the solar year.
Yeah, I love that too. And he talks a lot about that and how important they are for relationships too. These two signs, Dhata and Aryama, and then on the other side, Twashta and Vishnu, which is also ruled by Mars and Venus.
Yeah, exactly.
And then when you have, I'm going to talk a little bit about Rasi Aspects.
Oh, great. Go.
So when you fold with the South Indian chart, you can fold it at those equinox points, and then Aryama and Dhata would be touching.
Yeah.
It's the astronomically correct Rasi aspects. That's one of the options in Kala. Okay. So that is Aryama and Dhata Rasi aspect each other. Astronomically correct Rasi aspects. So we've had a huge focus the last 3 years or so, maybe a little less than that, on Dhata. And so Dhata, of course, is the mother, it's the foundation of things. So we had a Saturn-Rahu conjunction in that sign for a while now, and then Saturn moved into Aryama. But Saturn is still Rashi aspecting Dhata, and Rahu is Rashi aspecting Aryama. So there's this, on the other connotations of Dhata is Hetih, or the Hetih force, right? The force of violence. And then Aryama is peace, or alliances and peace. And of course, Saturn and Rahu in Dhata was causing a lot of violence in the world and on a global scale. And then now you had a shamed Mars and Sun in Dhata, and Mercury and Venus. And that's when the Iran attack happened, or USA attacked Iran. Now we're embroiled in this war, and that shows up with a shamed Mars, a starved and shamed Mercury. Anytime there is a shamed or starved planet in an Aditya, of course, that Aditya suffers. You get the negative side, or the working in a way that isn't beneficial. It doesn't move love along. It's stuck. So now we have this because of all of this pileup, especially with Rahu. The node being there causes the shame, of course, but they also really put a kind of a timestamp on what is happening, and focusing on that Aditya for the evolution of humans in general. And so Rahu and being in Dhata is going to cause some problems with the Hetih force, or with the iron force, the force of
I think the nodes are at like 8 degrees, aren't they, at the moment? So there's still some time that they'll be in Dhata.
After July 26th, they move out. And then, okay, so Saturn moved into Aryama, and Aryama is long-term alliances.
Yep.
And Saturn going into Aryama, where Saturn likes to be, it's a good placement. That just means that it's a reset of our long-term alliances. In all countries, everywhere, we're resetting our long-term alliances. And that is a little bit afflicted because Neptune is going through Aryama as well.
How do you see that playing there, Laura? Saturn helps us to let go of things, right? So we are expecting that there'll be some endings of alliances that just naturally have run their course. It doesn't have to be a bad thing necessarily. But then with Neptune there as well is a sustaining energy too, right?
Yeah, that's also going to give another really important long-term alliance, but what we're expecting from those long-term alliances is probably not going to happen. Or not going to happen in the way that we are expecting them to happen, or why the alliance came about in the first place. It's going to completely change as Neptune runs its course through Aryama, which would be tropical Aries, but we call it Aryama.
That's right. So is that what you're saying, is that these two planets have entered into Aryama more or less exactly the same time, like within very short, and so they've entered into a sign, a rashi, that's all about alliances and partnerships and reciprocity, isn't it? It's about good relationships where there's a good give and take. It's not about exploiting. Aryama doesn't have anything in there about exploiting. It's all about sustainable relationships. But so Neptune is going to be there in Aryama for quite some time, like 20 years or however long it takes for Neptune to move. But are you saying that because it arrived with Saturn, there'll be these endings and these relationships, or the beginning, whatever we're starting will be relationships of lack, or we'll have some of those Saturn kind of overtones?
I think when outer planets go into sign, usually it disturbs the energy, I think, of the sign at first, because the outer planets are huge learning processes, and Neptune and Pluto are more challenging in my experience. And the fact that you do have the node rashi aspecting. You have Rahu rashi aspecting. And so that's going to make things a little more chaotic and gives a lot of unexpected challenges. But the Neptune being with Saturn, I think Saturn is a good thing. Like you were saying, things are coming to their natural endings. and then there will be new beginnings. And we're already seeing that. We're already seeing some of that. But those alliances are going to be long. Just the fact that Neptune creates a certain amount of expectations around things and an idealistic view of things, a romanticized view of things. But it does, you have to be open to what is developing. And it develops along a line that you really can't control. You're hoping that it'll work out. With Neptune, there's all these hope around it. And always you need to, with the outer planets, you have to reach into the opposite sign to balance that energy and not put such a focus. That's how the outer planets work. They're like the nodes in that way. So that's why I think that Neptune going through Aryama is going to cause some challenges about long-term alliances that we make there's going to be some deception there. But I don't think it's because of Saturn. I just think it's Neptune, nature of Neptune.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also, okay, so there's another thing happening like with relationships, romantic relationships between men and women, which is going through a massive transformation as well. That they're in it because it's going through this transformation. There's a lot of pushback or there's a lot of negative reactions anytime something is changing in a major way. So you have this kind of reactive energy and this anger. I was just remarking to my husband, everybody seems really angry. And I took, that's because things are changing and developing, but it will work itself out as Neptune moves through Aryama. It's a big relationship focus, just not only between relationships between countries, relationships between the ruling elite and the people, the relationships between men and women. So we're going to see that balancing out and changing it. Yeah, again, I think it's going to change for the better because out of the Iron Age. We're coming out of the Iron Age where we are in an ascending cycle and we're getting better. People want better lives. They want to improve themselves. They want to learn about themselves and explore the human experience and make it better. And we're trying to do that. And just by the very fact that like it's coming out now, we have a lot of weird people in elite positions, exploitative people. And the fact that it's coming out and people are not okay with it, this is like the beginning of a better relationships going forward, I think.
This is a really interesting part of the discussion that you're hitting on here, Laura. And I think this is really important that when we were looking at, as tropical Vedic astrologers, we were looking at this 0 degrees conjunction in Aries, it was into a masculine fire sign, into where Saturn is debilitated, the start of a whole new zodiac cycle because Aries is the first sign. So it had a lot of this maybe surging masculine energy and get ready for the start of a new cycle on a masculine footing and act first, think later kind of something. But if we're looking at it in Adityas, we are seeing this feminine receptive sign, feminine signs are receptive, they're receiving, they're providing the space for something to occur, and they're feminine. So actually this Saturn-Neptune conjunction, the start of a whole new Neptune experience, is happening in a female sign, not a masculine sign. It's really fundamentally different. And this is why I was so fascinated that I wanted to talk to you. And for those of us doing prajna or looking at predicting, what do we make of, like you were saying, you see it as, yes, in the long term, this is a good thing. It is.
I think it is, yeah, definitely. And that it will last. What happens as during the Saturn transit and the Neptune transit through Aryama is fundamentally going to change things for a very long time because of the fixed Earth quality of Aryama. remember that Aryama is the law of long.
Yeah.
And the law of long is because it's fixed Earth, things change very slowly, but when they change, it's for a very long time.
They don't go back.
And we're building. It's also a building phase. We're in these new alliances, the reset of the alliances, the reset of how men and women relate to each other, and the relationship between people in power, people with no power. I think they are changing, and it takes a long time for that to do that. Saturn is a long-term planet too.
And many of the supporting crew for Aryama are gentle compared to last time I was here in the podcast. I was talking about Dhata, Aditya, and we were talking about, like you've already mentioned, Hetih force is fantastic. We do need the protective mother energy. You've got to be able to protect your cubs, and life gives you, Aditya gives you this force. It's wonderful. Suki Naga from Dhata Aditya had to save the whole Naga race. Like he had a lot to do. And so there was a lot going on there with Dhata. But in Aryama, we have Praheti force, the force to sublimate. We're able to take that breath, bring it inside, see the big picture, and just allow things to wash through, like not get into the drama, see the drama, notice it, and keep our hearts open and keep moving. Yeah. And also the Naga is it's on the shoreline. It's not out there in the kind of crazy storms of the ocean. It's here in a kind of comfortable position, and perhaps if the Naga causes a problem at all, it's around being too comfortable, that we maybe sometimes we don't go and dig into things or dig up our own traumas or whatever that maybe are fettering our chariot. But what do you think about that? Many of the retinue, many of the companions for Aryama Aditya are gentle. This is also feeding into the idea that what comes of this Neptune transit through Aryama will be long-term good and in a gentle way once we get through this Rahu moves out of Dhata situation.
Yeah, we still have to deal with Dhata. And then also Mars moving through Aryama, starving Saturn. We may see a ramp up of violence based on that too, but that's going to move out in May 18th or 19th, I think, that Mars will move out of Aryama. But when you have that Mars-Saturn conjunction in Aryama, that you can expect some
more intensity.
Violence.
Yeah. Yeah. So then it's a rocky start for this Neptune started.
It is, yeah. It's the funny thing too, that whenever all the outer planets they changed signs around the same time they were all in the beginning of the signs.
Yeah.
That usually means a big world changes, massive world changes, just generally speaking. And what I find interesting too, I'm just going to hop on over. I want to talk about Uranus for a second. But I love Uranus is actually a planet I like, the outer planets. I like the Uranus transits generally, usually. Sometimes it can cause problems, but it's been in Mitra, right?
Yeah.
With these human potentials and skills and that kind of thing. And it's an air. We have it listed as air. That makes a lot of sense to me because that's like social media, AI, all of those things, and which is developing very quickly. And not the entire time that Uranus has moved through Mitra, it just exploded with AI knowledge and all of that kind of thing. But then Uranus will move into Varuna. Now that's going to be interesting too. So
yeah, I mean, it's really interesting that you say that, because I think when we're looking at in tropical Vedic astrology, we were saying that Uranus is about to go into Gemini. This whole technology AI thing is going to go like through. If this has been what it's been like in Taurus, what's it going to be like when it gets into Gemini? Revolution in AI. But when we look at, maybe it's been in Mitra this whole time, this last 6-7 years, right? It's been, we have seen huge advances in,
it's just
AI. We're all working, so many of us are now working completely online. having relationships. I have such great relationships. People that I've never hugged. Like I love Laura, and we haven't even hugged yet.
We haven't in person.
That's right.
Yeah.
Could it in fact be that Uranus has been in this human potentials air sign for the last 6-7 years, and now it's coming into Varuna? And did you want to say anything about that, Laura, or do you want to save that till the next time we get together? I'm in your head.
Oh, yeah, I want to talk about that. Yeah, I love the idea of Uranus going into Varuna, because I think we're going to make such advances in psychological and emotional healing.
Wow.
It already started.
I'm getting goosebumps. Oh my God.
Yeah, because Uranus was in Varuna briefly, right? It was there for a while and then it moved back in. It went retrograde. And we're getting the touch, like all of these new types of healing methods like EMDR and EFT, and that's great. And those are up and coming things. But people really want to understand how they can heal themselves. So they're in their consciousness, which is all Varuna. That's what Varuna is, what it means. And love, the all-encompassing love, and the king. Varuna is one of the kings. The two kings are Varuna and Indra. I should actually say it's the queen. Varuna is the queen, but even though Varuna is male, but it's a water Aditya, and all about how we can change things very quickly in our consciousness. And I think it's an ideal time. We're really going to be able to explore that, learning to get over, love ourselves, and heal through feminine methods.
Yeah.
And brand new ones, totally innovative things. EMDR is just the touch of the iceberg, the tip of the iceberg.
And they've been around for ages. So I think, expect a lot of newness there. But now as you're saying that, I'm realizing all of our outer planets have moved into female signs. I'm just catching up with the Aditya world. Pluto's now in Parjanya, a female sign. Neptune is in Aryama, a female sign, and Uranus is going to go also into a female sign. So no wonder I'm the heels in love with this goddess.
No, right? What do you how do you think?
This is why I invite you on the podcast. So I'm scrambling. It's like updating I need a new download because it's so interesting. The mythology that we tell ourselves is so important. And I've been telling this masculine mythology, right? I've been telling this animal mythology because a zodiac is a zoo. How zodiac. I've been telling animal mythology for all these years as an astrologer. And in terms of all these planets, they're all moving into masculine signs. I've been telling this masculine mythology for the last 2-3 years as we anticipate this. And now I've called you on to the podcast because I'm realizing that it's a whole different thing. And I just love that the Adityas do put the goddess Aditi right where she belongs. And of course, I love that we're speaking about deities. We're speaking to our highest potential that we're only beginning to remember what it is. How did you?
I know.
I'm catching up with you, but I don't want to put a spanner in the works, but in tropical astrology, there's this mythology that every time Uranus goes into Gemini, the US is at civil war with itself. Do you
really?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Oh, okay. So, so you have anything to say to me about that? And so we can. Yes, apparently this is, if you trace back these conflicts, they line up with Uranus transits.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I've been wondering about that because of Varuna having those connotations of being the fourth sign and being the home, and Uranus having that disruptive, start anew, we need to correct course because the way we were headed isn't home. It isn't the long-term sanctuary that we were hoping for. But
wow. I have to check that out. See how that works.
Yes, but so
there's always going to be some disruptions with Uranus entering a sign because of all of the people want to reach above and beyond and all of this new ideas. It's always in the ether, but we're tapped into it. And I like to think of Uranus as that. We're tapping into that powerful innovation, I guess you could say. I'm excited for Uranus to move into Varuna.
Yeah.
everybody's afraid of AI taking over everything and doing everything. I don't think that's going to happen. It is going to take over quite a few things, like it can write code and people are going to be out of work in a lot of places, but I don't believe that AI is going to reach singularity or become conscious or aware of itself. I don't believe that. I don't believe like Skynet on the Terminator. I think that we still need the human spirit. That's how, especially when Uranus moves out of Gemini into Varuna. Mitra into Varuna.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that has a lot of hope really right there, because if it was to stay in Mitra forever, then it would go down that line of our best friend being AI, us having android robots that we can have these relationships that we want to have with, if it was staying in Mitra. But it's leaving.
Yeah.
It's not to say that those things won't continue to develop, but the focus is going to shift to, like you say, the all-encompassing love of Varuna. How do we get more of that? And some of it may be through AI, but some of it may be through psychedelics, or some of it may be through consciousness healing, lifting our vibration.
Yeah, that's what I think. We're moving in that direction. The younger generations are very focused on that. Even, I think, a little too much, but still it's great that it's coming out. And people want to understand how to heal themselves. And I think that Uranus going into Varuna, we're going to see a lot of progress in that area. And then the nodes too, it's interesting because Rahu will move into Parjanya in July. And then you'll have 2 planets in water, Adityas, and Rahu in a water Aditya.
Yeah.
So it's all a consciousness.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, so let's bring in that Varuna is a water sign that's going to receive an outer planet, and Parjanya is a water sign that already has an outer planet, has Pluto in it. What are your thoughts about Pluto being in Parjanya versus what we were, as tropical astrologers, we've been talking about Pluto being in Aquarius?
Okay, yeah. Also, that too. Parjanya is, of course, the rain and the droplets of spirituality satiating us, fulfilling us, and a feeling of oneness and connection with everything. I really like the idea when he was talking about Parjanya, and that was the Yaksha, or not the Yaksha, the Apsara, which is a dancer, a feminine goddess type. What is it? A goddess, basically. But
goddess. It's like a nymph in European mythology. But really, that's not to undermine how powerful these are. These are really, the Apsaras are our pull to do something like that. They bring you into rapport with whatever it is that they have in mind for you. So they can really move you and change you. Extremely way. Yeah.
Yeah, I find that so fascinating. But what was I going to say about this?
Parjanya and the Apsara.
Okay, so he puts you in the mood for everything.
Yeah.
That's because you're connected to everything. When you're connected to everything, you never feel like, oh, I don't feel like doing that, or, oh, I don't want to do this, and, oh, I wish I was somewhere else. How many times do we say that to ourselves? But this allows you to connect with everything, which I love that idea. Now, so Pluto going through that. So Pluto is, to me, is going through Parjanya, which is a very spiritual Aditya, probably the most spiritual one, or the last one, is a lot of belief systems are going to end. The psychological connection to belief systems are going to come to an end. And again, because we're in ascending cycle, I think it will be for the better. And there's a certain amount of fear around certain belief systems or religious systems or ways to connect to the source are going through a transformation. A lot of them are ending. And once something ends or dies, it immediately transforms into something else because it's an energy, and energy will never perish. It will just change of form, which is connected to Vishnu. But in Parjanya, Pluto, the minute something ends, it goes into something else. And a lot of times when you have a system come to an end, it goes into several different other things, more varied, I guess you could say, more individuated. You can see that happening in Europe, especially, like certain belief systems more going into the differentiated type of ways of connecting to the source. That's what I tend to think that will happen. And then the more negative side, or the side that doesn't work, when Parjanya is not working, has to do with escapism and addictions too. It's very addictive because people want to escape because they don't feel connected. And that ways of dealing with addiction may come to an end. That's connected to Uranus going through Varuna, because we're discovering new ways of forming our consciousness, healing our consciousness. Those are two big ways I think Pluto will manifest moving through Parjanya.
Wow. So are you suggesting there that there's a lot of money spent on drugs to escape? Are you suggesting that Pluto has the potential, because of its partnership with Uranus, will also be going through Varuna and will be learning how to heal this stuff so that we are experiencing all-encompassing love that would free up people's dependence on drugs, that industry?
All right. That's a good point. Yeah. I think that it very well may move in that direction. There's such a huge reliance on drugs. And it's interesting you bring that up, because when Rahu moves into Parjanya, Rahu is drugs, and Rahu will be with Pluto. So there can be an ending around certain addictions to substances or reliance on pharma even.
Yeah.
Which would be great, I think.
It's got big implications for money, hasn't it? Like, we're talking about it like it's about human consciousness and healing, but there's a lot of money in these things, in either illegal or legal drugs. Like, it's a big industry. Yeah. Both of them are big industries.
Yeah, and it's harmful. I think just too much reliance on something. There can be a good thing, but then it can turn into a bad thing when it's just too much. And we're seeing the effects of that. We're seeing the effects of too many vaccines, too many drugs. Hopefully people start to understand that they can heal themselves naturally a lot of the time. Maybe not all of the time, but a lot of the time. And then especially when Rahu goes into Parjanya, again, Rahu is part of our evolution as a species. And then we're going to be focusing on that, wanting to connect to the source and discovering that the old ways of doing that aren't working because Pluto's there. Pluto's going to show you this isn't going to happen the way you think it is, and it's going to come to an end. So yeah, that's how I interpret that. There's more. It's interesting that you bring up money, and because you're right, there's that the pharma is a huge source of revenue, and with the evolution of information that Uranus going through Mitra gave so people can discover, especially AI. I like the fact AI can compile information so quickly and just give it to you. That the result of that is people discovering how they can do this themselves. And yeah, that's how I feel about it.
Good. Fingers crossed. Well, that one.
Yeah. I know, right?
Yeah, because I guess tell me what you think about Rahu going through Parjanya with Pluto there, and what you were saying, that they'll be looking for the traditional ways to connect and they're not going to find it. I think that does leave an opening for people to connect through AI, to be using their relationship with their AI as their relationship to connect to all love and have their own private relationship with Buddha or Jesus or whoever they feel that their AI is representing.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's definitely something that can manifest because of Rahu being technology.
Yeah.
And that's for a year and a half. I think probably initially that it definitely will start up something like that. I don't really know that much about AI as companions. I know it's out there. I know that people do use that for that purpose.
Yeah.
I'm not really that familiar with it.
Yeah, I think AI can be really like your best friend because it wants to keep that relationship with you and it's always available. And it's not really interested. It doesn't have its own standpoint generally. When you're dealing with another real life human being, they've got their own agendas all the time, not necessarily malicious ones. They're hungry or they're thinking about something else or they want to get something from you. But AI in some ways just wants your attention. And there's a lot of people who need attention. That's what Varuna is and Parjanya, our water signs, are offering us, is that connection. Yeah, so it's just something to think about. So it's interesting. We've talked about that it's a bit of a rocky start for Neptune into Aryama because it's going through there with Saturn. We've talked about Parjanya is going to be a little bit of a rocky start as well because although Pluto's in there, Rahu's coming as well. And Uranus is going into Varuna. It will have a whole whoosh of the solar cluster is going to go by, like the sun and the inner planets will go by. But as we're talking about Parjanya and Rahu, we're going to have Ketu moving into Vivashwan.
Yep, with Jupiter too, yeah.
And Jupiter too. Yes, that's what I was going to say to you as well. So is that a rocky start for Vivashwan as well, to have Ketu and Jupiter coming? Or is that they have a harmony, sympathy with each other, Ketu and Jupiter?
Yeah, I like the Jupiter-Ketu conjunction. But it is going into Vivashwan, so Jupiter's getting a little starved there. But Vivashwan wants to help people. Wants to better society. The law of following the law, or the law of rules in making a better society. And I think the old ways of doing that, again, that they're going to improve upon that and change the ways that is done with Jupiter going through. And then Jupiter can get stuck when it's starved, especially by Mercury. So Mercury rules Vivashwan. And it's a big rule-based, following the rules, following the steps, which Jupiter doesn't like to do. So that we can get bogged down a little bit in bureaucracy. And it's going to be more difficult to do things in a big way. I think that Jupiter with Ketu in Vivashwan may cause some recession and put a little damper on certain innovations. And again, this is interesting because Jupiter is religion and spirituality, and going into Vivashwan, that's tying in with what I was saying before about the endings of certain ways of connecting to the source. And so when Jupiter goes into Vivashwan, there is a wanting to return, because Ketu's the past. So wanting to return to an old way of an old religion, or how we practiced religion in the past. But that's not going to last. Especially after Jupiter moves out of Vivashwan, but we're going to see a year of that.
Exactly. And Jupiter won't be there without Ketu.
Right.
The whole of the Jupiter transit will not only have starved by Mercury, but be with Ketu.
Yeah, exactly. I'm already seeing some of that you can already see some of it happening, especially in the United States, but it's really going to be very pronounced when Ketu and Jupiter move in. It's going to be within a month of each other. Jupiter moves in June 30th, and Ketu moves July 26th.
Okay, so there was, correcting. There is a little bit of Jupiter there with that.
Yeah, that's for a month. Yeah.
So then you see that as being like, a couple of things come to mind for me there. Either more enforcement of rules around religion, so like more Christian nationalism or whatever you want to say, like more like this is the way we do it and our laws should mirror the biblical ideals or whatever. It would be one thing that I'm hearing, but then is the other thing that we're also hearing maybe also more scandals of just seeing how the rules have not been followed in religious organizations and more behavior of religious people that is going to disappoint our idea of what is,
Yeah, I do. That's a good point. Yeah, when you said it, I was just like, yeah, that's exactly it. And yeah, it's going to affect Jupiter. It's going to, the next couple of years, because Jupiter doesn't do very well in Twashta either, and I think that there will be an attempt to streamline rules and regulations and bureaucracy to try to make it more, to improve upon it in some way, but not going to give the results that people believe it will. And that goes for religion too.
Yeah.
And spiritualities.
As you're speaking, what I'm also hearing, but I don't know, is because I'm over here in Europe, it makes me think about the European Union. And maybe the European Union is a bit Jupiterian in that it does have these visionary ideals of union of all of these disparate, wonderful European countries. And it's like a beacon of that, but it's really bureaucratic, right? It just has to be because you've got so many countries and it's all about diplomacy and everybody has to have their say and everything has to be an equal participation by everybody. Necessarily, it becomes really bureaucratic. So I wonder, as someone who lives in Europe and is pretty happy that we have a European Union, I wonder if there's going to be continued disappointment with the bureaucracy of that and with the way that the ideals of the European Union have not translated into what people want from that or whatever. Does that sound you can put to that?
That sounds very correct. Yes, a good point. That's a great point with the European Union. Yeah. I think of Vivashwan, I think of bureaucracy. That's one part of it. That's going to translate too into lack of funds, recession.
Yeah. Wow, fascinating. So as I'm speaking to you, I'm realizing that in this period that we're speaking about now and looking forward for 6 months, 12 months, or maybe I should restrict it to 6 months because what I want to say is we're really getting all of our planets between the nodes. We just got everything all on one half of the...
Oh, yep.
A lot of action on one half. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's a very fated time. Everything is very fated and how things are changing. And when they change in such a big way like this, you have a big reaction. You just do. People get scared. They resist it. That's just normal. Yeah, and I think a lot of this reemergence of wanting to return to the past and a lot of the anger is that because we're changing so quickly. But ultimately, it will be for the better. I definitely think we'll come out of it. People will adjust. People are going to see we can't return to the past. But you do have to have this sort of reaction in the beginning.
Yeah. But many of the signs we've been speaking about are female. Parjanya, we talked about Varuna, Vivashwan is also female. And they do allow us to integrate a little bit. That's something about the female sign, isn't it? Is a little bit, okay, well, how do I process that? Or how does that flow through?
Right.
Maybe we are being given the tools.
Yeah, you mentioned it. I'm so glad you mentioned this because there's a lot of argument or a lot of debate around what's masculine and what's feminine. And is that feminine? Is that masculine? So I thought about this a long time ago. And to me, what is masculine is moving from a point of concentration to dissipation. Feminine is anything moving from dissipation to a point of concentration. That's it.
Yeah.
And you can describe things that way. You can, in being receptive and integration, that's feminine. Yeah. Because you're taking what's happening and you're figuring it out and processing it and making it into something. And you're right, that all the planets in those feminine signs, it's going to happen especially when Uranus moves into Varuna, and Jupiter moves into Vivashwan, we're really going to see that.
A lot of feminine
integrate.
Yeah. But there's also a kind of passivity in a way, isn't there? In that this extraordinary time that we live in, with all of these planets in female signs, there will be an allowing or just a surrender that this is the time that we live in. It's like an acceptance, not necessarily like a mental I accept. It's just the stance is, this is the evolution that's occurring.
It's a very important time. Yeah. It's weird because ever since I was little, I had this feeling that I would live through something really big. Did you ever have that feeling? Like, I'm talking on a world level.
Yeah, I did. But I don't know whether maybe every generation feels that. I don't know, Laura.
Yeah, I don't know. When I tell people that, they say, oh, really? You felt that way? But
no, I think that too. And I think I struggled I remember when Obama was elected, and that's when I felt pregnant. And I remember having at that time this feeling like, oh, we've made it. Like, we've now even elected a black president. There's no racism anymore. There's no glass ceiling. Like, we have made it to the promised land. And I was pregnant, and I was thinking, yes, this is it. And then since then, recalibrate. And realize that maybe I have to get on universal time. Like, when you think about the cycle of time and how long we've been in this dark Kali Yuga, maybe I'm not in such an extraordinary generation. And around that Obama time, I was like, peace in my lifetime. That's what I'm going to see. So I think I have always thought that I am, and I do live in an extraordinary generation. And shout out to all of my Gen X. Here we are.
Yeah,
but the best generation, exactly, the best generation. But we came on the back of that whole like Age of Aquarius hippie thing. Like, it was pretty hard to outdo. Like, our parents changed the world. Like, we all hate baby boomers now. And I know why. I understand it.
I think that movement was hijacked. I think it was a great movement.
Yeah.
You know, there was this burst of creativity and knowledge, wanting to know, and a return to peace and the earth, and all of that was really good. And then it just got hijacked. But I thought it was a beautiful time.
Yeah. Perhaps we are living in an extraordinary generation. Let's keep our fingers crossed. And see where we're at next month when we get together. Laura, what are some things for those of us who are dabbling now in Adityas, in predictions, maybe for our clients or maybe with prajnas? What's something that we can think about over the months coming up? I think the thing that I'm going to take away from this conversation is this movement into the feminine. That's going to be something that now I'm going to be reflecting and thinking about. But is there any tips or advice or even just thought experiments for those of us we're tentatively moving into this space? What could be something that we could think about or focus on in the next month?
I like to point out, keep an eye on Mars.
Yeah.
And the Mars-Rahu conjunction with Mercury right now.
Yeah.
So Mercury's getting shamed, Mars is getting starved. Not a good time to travel.
Not a good time to travel. Okay.
No. And obviously what happened, just what's going on generally in the airports in the U.S., it's a shit show. I don't know if you've seen that. And then we just had a plane slam into a
fire.
Yeah, it was sad.
Yeah.
But, and funny because the Sun and Mercury are birds. Mm-hmm. So within traveling, the Sun and Mercury rule airplane travel or plane travel.
Okay.
So then Mars is going to move into Aryama and be there there's going to be a pilot, but the big one is Mars. There's going to be a Mars-Saturn conjunction in Aryama. You want to keep an eye on that too, because that can cause some trouble.
So if we're thinking about that as moving from tropical to Adityas, we're talking about the Mars-Rahu situation would be in Pisces in tropical, but is happening in Dhata in, So we're talking about, if you're experimenting with Adityas, watch that conjunction in a water sign if you think it's Pisces. Watch it in a fire sign if you think it's Dhata. And all of the accompanying, like feminine, masculine, etc., etc. And then following that, the Mars-Saturn conjunction is going to be in an earth sign if you think it's Aryama, or in a fire sign if you think it's Aries. So those will be some things. So I think this is it. For those of us beginning to move our predicting practice into Adityas, these conjunctions are now happening in completely different elements, genders, modalities. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Mars in Pisces isn't that problematic, but Mars in Dhata shouldn't be, but it's with Rahu. That's the problem. And then also the shaming it's
Mercury
causing.
there. Yeah.
And with starvation, Mars is starved. So and Dhata is the Hetih force. It's war.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Good. You've given us some things to think about, Laura. And already I've got questions for you the next time that I see you, because I want to learn more about what you were talking about, the rashi aspects. But let's do one extraordinary conversation at a time. Thanks so much, Laura. And thanks everyone who's been listening. Please let us know what you would like to know about predicting with Adityas, like little questions, techniques, subtle differences, big differences. And we'll try to get to them over the coming episodes. But for now, bye everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks a lot, Laura. Bye-bye.
Bye.